Owen Jones.
I'm actually disappointed by that response, Charles, in all honesty. Let's be absolutely clear about what happened. Firstly, this whole idea that Gaza, that Hamas broke the ceasefire, is just not true. In fact, it was broken after, in October, Israel killed 15 Palestinian fighters. They shot dead a mentally disabled Palestinian. They killed another 13-year-old in an intrusion. And when there was an attempt to actually get a ceasefire, negotiations were ongoing, that is when they assassinated Ahmed Jabari, completely ending those ceasefire talks. Now, it's often said, and Barack Obama made this point, he said, what country on earth would tolerate rockets being fired at them? I ask you this, what people on earth would tolerate a siege which stops basic supplies getting in, an occupation, a 45-year-old occupation, a brutal occupation at that, illegal settlements all over the West Bank, which are in total violation of international law, and what we've seen in the course of this onslaught are the deaths of 158 Palestinians, at least 30 of whom are children, and I don't want to just throw statistics around. I'll give you one example of one of those children. Omar Misharan, he was 11 months old, he was a little boy, the son of a BBC journalist, and he was killed in a so-called targeted strike. Now, we all want a secure and lasting peace. When we have Israeli ministers, like the Interior Minister, calling for Gaza to be sent back to the Middle Ages, when in the last offensive we had another minister calling for a Holocaust to be inflicted on Gaza, when we have the son of Ariel Sharon, who wrote in the Jerusalem Post talking about how Nagasaki and Hiroshima were solutions, possible solutions to be inflicted. When we have those people, we won't get a secure peace, but the way we will get it for Arabs and Jews alike, to end the occupation, end the siege of Gaza, and dismantle the illegal settlements, and finally have a just settlement for the Palestinian people, ensuring peace for Arabs and Jews and the region as a whole.
You, sir.
I think part of the problem is that people like Owen should actually keep their nose out of something that they have no intimate knowledge of, and that they jump on the bandwagon of this anti-American, ultra-left Israel bashing that is fashionable at the moment. You know, it's all very well for people on the panel and at home to sit in their suburban armchairs with no actual knowledge, intimate knowledge of the conflict.
Sorry, can I just come back to that? I mean, I'm disappointed you didn't engage with a single argument that I just put across.
All right, well, let him finish his point.
Some of the terms are bandied around as if they're factually correct.
What did I get wrong? Sorry, just correct the fact.
You know, the word pre-1967 territory is bandied around as a given fact, whereas in fact pre-1967 Jordan controlled the West Bank and Gaza, not the Palestinians. There's never been a Palestinian state on the West Bank and Gaza.
What's your view on the question of whether Israel was justified?
I think civilian life is regrettable, and I think, you know, I'm not a person who wholeheartedly agrees with the policies of every Israeli government, but I think that there's a lack of understanding by a lot of people in Britain and in the West generally of the situation that Israel faces when they have no actual knowledge of the history and the complexity of the conflict.
And you, sir, up there.
I think that gentleman is completely ignorant. He hasn't answered a single question that Owen put to him. Okay. Why is it that President Ahmadinejad of Iran, when he said something about blowing Israel into the Middle Ages, that it received such wide scrutiny, and America are threatening to possibly even go into Iran in the future, but when the Israeli minister says it, it falls on deaf ears?
Ian Duncan Smith.
Yeah, look, first of all, let's take a pace back from this for a second. This is a tragedy, whichever way you cut it, on either side. The idea that people are bombing each other, killing each other, seeing civilians, children being killed, that's a complete and utter tragedy. And there's never any excuse for any of that. So the reality for us is, how do we get ourselves out of this? The key problem as to who started it.
When you say no excuse, do you mean, therefore, the bombing was unjustified?
Well, the question really is, did Israel get rocketed first, in which case did they retaliate? My point is, look, we now have a ceasefire. The real hope for us, and this is the real problem, in fact, is that the West, America, us, Europe, we took a pace back. For the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, we've done nothing about the Middle East. Let's be honest, we got completely fixated on the Arab Spring, and we completely forgot that at the heart of this still lies a very, very deep problem between Palestine and Israel. You know, Hamas in the Gaza Strip refused point blank to acknowledge Israel's right to exist. Israel refused to deal with them in Gaza until they do that, and also until they take responsibility for the rockets, etc. So each has taken deeper and deeper entrenched positions. So my point really is here, one thing that may well come out of this, which is really important. Egypt, we worried about, has actually taken up a front and centre place. Now that is a very, very good thing. Some leadership from the President of Egypt has got this thing rolling again. We've got, actually, intriguingly, Israel and Hamas having in a peculiar way to recognise each other by both, on the one hand, agreeing to take responsibility for the rocket attacks, and on the other side, agreeing to open the borders. That actually may be the beginning of a start of a change. And we should actually pledge ourselves in the West, with America and the American President, to get behind this and now really find a solution to the two-state problem and get both sides talking to each other, agreeing to acknowledge that each has the right to exist, and basically saying, now's the time to settle this. Otherwise, this could end up further bloodshed and further terror.
Yes, you in the second row. Then I've gone. Yes. Yes, sir.
Is it up to Israel and Palestine to determine whether Palestine has statehood?
Is it up to Israel and Palestine to determine?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Doesn't it go through the UN?
Yvette Cooper.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point, because I agree with a lot of the points that Ian has made about the tragedy that has been unfolding and the importance now of having a ceasefire. But a ceasefire is not a peace process. And we have got to have a peace process. There is no military solution that is going to work here, given the history of what has happened in Israel and Palestine, but also the importance of us getting towards a two-state solution and having a meaningful set of negotiations to do that. I think that the debates that are being put forward for the UN are really important. This is an opportunity for the UN to give greater recognition to the Palestinian Authority. I hope that the UN will do that. I hope that the British government will change its position and support the recognition of the Palestinian Authority, because I think that is an opportunity to support a political and a diplomatic process to reach peace, rather than the violence and the rocket attacks and the violence that we have seen over recent months.
Do you think the Foreign Secretary was wrong to lay the blame on Hamas for this?
I think that the danger, I mean, look, the immediate trigger of what happened, obviously, was about the rocket attacks on Israel. And, of course, you know, Israelis should be able to live in security and not have to endure the fear from rocket attacks. On the other hand, I think the wider cause, we have to accept the wider cause of what's been happening in the last few weeks has been the failure to have a proper peace process, the failure to have a long-term, sustained negotiation towards a two-state solution, the failure to see progress for the inaction against the illegal settlements that have been taking place, as well as the wider issues and the long-term commitment. We haven't, as a United Nations, taken this seriously enough. That's our opportunity to do so now.
Okay. The woman in the fourth row there.
I wonder that, given that there are now over 500,000 Israelis living within the West Bank, whether anyone on the panel actually still believes that the two-state solution is viable. Why? I mean, is it time to have a debate about a different type of solution?
Deborah Meaden.
I want to go back to, something the gentleman said over there. The truth of the matter is that I don't live there, and I don't know. I can form opinions reading through the news. Who started this? Who caused it? You know, whose fault it was? Trust me, we will never ever understand that. We are in a cycle that has to be broken. I'm absolutely right. It's not going to be a military answer to this. But I think what the ceasefire has done is it's hopefully created space so that you don't have to have these debates in this state of high tension. That actually it says, right, everybody stop for a minute. Because trying to get back to, actually, I suspect we were pretty guilty of causing all of this at some point, you know, so it's not about who caused all of this. Now, if people can get their mind wrapped around that, there is no, because I can promise you that for every reason, that's why we bombed, yeah, but we did that because this could go on back for the last 100 years. Until we get our mind wrapped around the fact that it cannot be a military solution. There has to be an end to the blockades. The whole rhetoric needs to be, needs people being able to pass in and out of that country. They need to be able to trade. And until we get our minds wrapped around that, there will be no solution.
The crucial point you're making is about the existence of those settlements. And I have to say, what other country on earth would be allowed to flout international law in the way that Israel has done for decades?
Well, answer her
those
question.
settlements?
Her question.
Well, the key point there...
You heard what she said, which was that the number of people who've now settled on the West Bank make the two-state solution practically impossible.
There are two possible solutions. One is to have a federal solution where you have equal rights for both Arabs and Jews. That seems to many people obviously far-fetched, but they did say that about South Africa back in the day. Otherwise, you have to dismantle the settlements, enforce international law. But what has to happen, because the point is Britain supports, as other Western countries do, they've supported and armed Israel to the teeth. They're not acting as honest brokers. They have to use their pressure to force Israel to give in and give justice to the Palestinian people.
Owen, thank you. I'm going to take a couple more points from the audience, then we'll move on. Person up there in the back row.
What frustrates me about this conversation is the only reason that we're having it is because rockets were fired. What about, I mean, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I've spent time volunteering in the West Bank in UN schools. And what I've seen there is children growing up in an environment where they don't get taught politics. When they draw pictures of their homes, they draw pictures of soldiers, and they see their brothers at night getting imprisoned, taken and put into prison. What are these children growing up understanding? What do we have for the future?
Okay. Thank you. Well, on that point, the clock's against